Yeah, what was the last discussion?
Axios.
Axios only, right?
Yes.
And do you have any questions before we start?
No, sir.
Yes, yes,
I am having one doubt, sir. Can I share my screen, sir?
yes, you can.
Sir, is my screen visible, sir?
Yes.
Yes, sir. Here I didn't get this image, sir. Uh, the notebook image. So I checked the data in API. Here there is no poster. Oh, here there is no data for last object. So how
Yeah,
can I add
yeah,
it, sir?
it's okay. We cannot add. It's not there in our hand. So we have to live with that.
Okay, sir. But if I want to add, let's say, if it allow this fake story API, if it allows to add as data, how can I add, sir?
It doesn't allow, I think. If it allows, you have to make a post call.
Post call like this only, sir. I tried to do it. Here I pasted one image, and when I am clicking on send, it is displaying one empty object.
Is it allowing?
No, no, sir. It
It has to be post, or if it is put, what is the ID? The ID also you have to pass. What is the ID here?
uh, I don't know, sir. But here in the data, there is no ID.
Don't play with their data. We cannot modify their data. Forget about that.
Okay, sir. Okay.
Yeah, we cannot update their data.
I am also getting one error, sir, while I am using this JSON server. Can I show, sir?
Yes, you can show.
Uh, Here the data is available, sir, but here the
What is the
data is
problem?
it's saying doesn't seem to exist, creating
Show,
any data.js.
show me your file. You have to run in this location only.
Yes, sir, I am running in that location only. See.
Can you run again one more time?
Yes. See, sir, this location only data D React 1 SRC.
D React 1 SRC components HTTP movies data.json. Movie data.json doesn't seem to exist.
Oh, okay, okay. I forgot this.
Huh.
How can I exit and again
Control C to exit.
control C? Okay. Yes, sir. Yes, yes, sir.
There is some error in the file, right? It's showing red.
Error in the file. Hello.
Wait. How is it?
The JSON data is wrong.
JSON data.
Bhargav, put the commas in the JSON data.
Comma. Okay.
Go to you should go to Google and ask how to use JSON server. Go to Google and ask how to use JSON server.
Yes, sir. Hello.
Openmedium.com.
Okay. Yes, sir.
Your data should be in this format.
Okay, I didn't give the name to the data and I didn't store it in array. Okay, sir. I got
Yeah,
it.
and it has to be like this.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. Thank you, sir.
Okay. Anybody else has any other question? Okay, if no question, let me share my screen. So yesterday we discussed what is Axios, how Axios is better than fetch method. Today we will discuss how to create Axios instance and use it uh, in different components. To do that, create a separate file called api.js. It can be anything, but it should be some meaningful name, and add the below code. Let's go to our project. Earlier, we used to write like this. We used to do like this. Axios.get and all. Now what we will do, we will create one file. The file name is api.js. In this api.js, what I'll do, I'll add this piece of code. So I'll import Axios. I'm importing Axios. Then I'm creating one Axios client, axios.create. The base URL is json placeholder typicode.com. When it will be useful, from the same URL, if you are hitting users, if you are hitting comments, if you are hitting to do, so no need to repeat this much. We imported Axios. We are creating one Axios client using axios.create method, and base URL is this one. This one is base URL. Then I'll create HTTP demo 3. In HTTP demo 3, I'll change the logic. I'll just change the logic, nothing else. Here what we will do in HTTP demo 3, import client from api.js. We have to import client from api.js. api.js is our created file. Client is our created function. Now in this fetch user, we can directly say client.get users. So wherever we used to write like this, whenever we used to write like this, this is HTTP demo 3. We don't need Axios anymore. We don't need this. So here we used to write await axios.get and URL. We don't have to pass the URL also. What we have to do, we have to import client, client, client.get, client.get users. So when we say client.get users, what is client? What is client? Client means axios.create. This client has all the methods. Client.get, what is the URL you want to hit? Here it is only users, but this base URL and this URL will be combined. This is base URL. After this base URL, this will be added. User list using Axios client. Now, if I enable HTTP demo 3, it should also work. Please take a look at these two files. This is first file. We have to create one Axios client. Then we have to use it here. First understand this API.js. Then I'll show you the other file.
So in this case, how can we call 2-3 times this API?
2-3 time means?
Means like to fetch the users, then to fetch something else from this. You, as you said, no, like.
Yeah. So this is client.get users. If I want something else, let's say I want comments data, const comments is equal to await client.get comments console.log comments. Even comments data we can fetch just by writing one line of code. If you go and see here,
So base URL will be always same, and just
yes,
means from the API perspective, if I am saying base URL will
yes,
be same. The path we will give, that REST path, that we can at a once only do it here.
correct.
ক্লায়েন্ট মানে কি বলতো ওই পাতা যেটা তৈরি করে রেখে এসছে সেটা ক্লায়েন্ট, সেটা তো অলরেডি ধরা আছে বেশ জল পর্যন্ত।
Any question?
Sir, that API.js we can use anywhere, right, inside the project?
Yeah, this API.js can be used anywhere.
Yeah, and just we can add our path parameter there.
Yes.
Okay.
So do we need to maintain this API.js as separate folder and this service layer as a separate folder, or that means whatever the services we are calling, on top of that only we can create a client like this?
We can create a separate folder altogether called API. Inside that we can create a file. No need to keep it inside HTTP also. We can store it outside of this folder.
Okay.
So that it will be used by other folders also.
Okay. So is there any benefit, like you are creating the connection at the first only and then you are calling every time the API? So is there any benefit if I will means directly do Axios.get?
The benefit is here in the component we are not writing axios.get. We are not passing the whole URL. So those are the things which we can avoid. That repetition of code we can avoid.
Okay.
Other than that, there is no other benefit. Code duplication can be avoided. So this part is clear.
Sir, what is slash user?
What is
Slash users.
slash users means after this URL, see this URL is not enough, right, to fetch the data. This is not the final URL. In this URL, if I add users, it will give me users data. If I add comments, it will give me comments data. If I add to-dos, it will give me to-dos data, right? So this is base URL. It is not changing. Only this part is changing. So the one which is changing, we are writing here. Which is not changing, we are writing here.
Sir, name what we called that name, sir. Slash user means name path or what is this?
No,
What
it's
we
not
called?
path. It's not path. It is part of the URL only. This is not full URL. It's not path. It's not path param, query param. No, it's not like that.
Okay.
This is part of URL only. We cannot say it as path param or query param.
Okay, sir.
No. Hope it is clear, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. Now, making multiple requests with Axios. Suppose we have to fetch data from multiple URLs at the same time. If we have to fetch multiple data from the same, multiple data from multiple APIs, we can use Axios.all. Axios.all. For that, I'll create another file, http demo 4. http demo 4. This is http demo 4. And in http demo 4, what we will do, we will write one use effect. In this use effect, I'll say or else if I want to call the data on a button click, that is also possible. That is also possible. What I'll do, I'll have a button here. After this, I'll have a button fetch data, and on click of this fetch data method we will call. This fetch data is a function. Const fetch data is equal to, it's a function. In this function, we will make multiple calls. To make multiple calls, let's import Axios. Import Axios from Axios. Okay. So we imported Axios. We imported Axios. Import Axios from Axios. Then here we will make call to multiple APIs. So let's say we have one URL called to-dos. This is one API. Then I'll say const promise one is equal to Axios dot get. This is one. Then promise 2 is equal to Axios dot get users. Then if I want to fetch both the data at once, I'll write Axios dot all promise 1 promise 2. We can again use async and all. Async. Oh, it's a arrow function, right? I'll use it here. Then const data1 data2 is equal to await promise1 promise2. Once the data is available, console.log data1 data2. Now demo4 is enabled. I'll go here. On click of the button, it will make a API call. On click of the button, it will make API call and it will fetch. This is fetching. Okay. Data1 dot data2 dot data, because it is object. So when we click, we get 10 users, 200 comments. Look at this code and tell me if you have any question.
So if I want to render the first promise, after that the second promise?
Then we have to call individually. We don't have to use axios.all.
Okay.
So can we achieve the same using fetch?
We can achieve the same thing using fetch, but somehow we have to use either promise.all or axios.all.
Okay.
If I have to fetch data at the same time, we have to use axios.all or promise.all.
So Axios can be used with fetch as well, is it?
Yes.
Okay.
Any other questions here?
So after getting this data, can we join it somehow?
We can join only if they are logically related data.
Okay, like we need to pass the index or some key of that particular this response, and with respect to that we can get the data.
Yeah, this is to-do data. This is users data. There is no relationship at all. So there is no point of combining. But if you have movie information coming from one API and IMDb information coming from another API, they are related.
Okay.
And we can combine them.
Okay. Like as I said, like with some key we will combine them, right?
Again, we have to write JavaScript logic for that.
Okay. I got it. And one more thing, previous one you used like Axios.create. So this is also the first base URL is same, right? We can do like Axios.create and we can keep that, and then we can call it. Means is that Axios.get was separate call, and this is a altogether one call, you mean to say?
No, even we have two calls here.
Okay. Yeah.
The thing is, if you want to use client, we can do that. Just comment it and import. Just say client.get users const promise1 promise2 comments.
No, that's fine. Then what is the difference between these two approaches?
এখানে প্রমিসেস ডট অল ইউজ করে যে দুটো কেস আছে, তুই বলতে পারছি দুটোকে একসাথে কল করলে না কেন যখন আলাদা আলাদা ছিল? মানে একসাথে কল করতে গেলেন কেন? অলের মধ্যে অ্যাটাচ করলেন কেন? অলের মধ্যে তখনই অ্যাটাচ করবো যখন ডিপেন্ডেন্ট থাকবো, রাইট? নাকি কেন করেছি একসাথে অলের মধ্যে আমরা? অলে অ্যাটাচ করে কি সুবিধা পেলাম আমি ইউজ করতে পারি?
Yes, it is possible.
What is the problem?
কি প্রবলেম
You
হচ্ছে?
see,
ইন্ডিভিজুয়ালি করতাম।
Yeah,
we can like this also.
yeah. So the thing is, if I could have called individually, I mean, I'm not getting why I'm calling it together. Like it should, whenever I will call together, it should be having some dependency. Otherwise, I no need to call together.
If dependency, then we don't have to call together. You have to call one after other.
Okay, then what is the benefit of Axios.all?
Axios.all will make both the calls parallelly. If this API is taking 5 seconds to respond, and this API is taking 4 seconds to respond, how much time Axios.all will take?
It has to be that much more stronger for them to have a sequence.
Not
to work
9,
with.
it's 5.
It will asynchronously take it, Dariya. By 5, বুঝতে পেরেছি প্রথম
This is
4
parallel call, right?
Yes, I got it.
Okay.
প্যারালাল কল হলো, ডিপেন্ডেন্সি নেই বলে। সরি,
Hope you understand, huh? Any question here? Or we are clear how to use Axios.all?
এগুলো জাভাস্ক্রিপ্ট অলরেডি বলেছো।
এটা কোথায় বলেছে অ্যাক্সিওস জাভাস্ক্রিপ্টে ছিল?
অনেকটা গল্প ছিল, কনসেপ্ট একই।
Are we clear how to use Axios.all?
Yes, sir.
Okay,
ওটা পুরো ডিটেলস
great.
বলেছে, আমার নোট আছে। আলাদা আলাদা করলে ওটা 3 সেকেন্ড হতো, আবার 4 সেকেন্ড হতো, এরকম বললাম তো। এটা একসাথে করলে 4 সেকেন্ডে পুরো ব্যাপারটা হয়ে গেল। ডিপেন্ডেন্সি নেই বলে আমরা আলাদা আলাদা কল করতে পারি, প্যারালালি এক্সিকিউট করতে পারলাম, একই সঙ্গে দুটো শুরু হলো।
This is also possible. We can do like this.
এবার ইন্টারসেপ্টের কথা বলতে পারছি, আমাদের বলেছিল। বাহ, পুরো ব্যাপারটা তো একই, জাভাস্ক্রিপ্ট আর রিঅ্যাক্টের মধ্যে। সিনট্যাক্সটা একটু এদিক ওদিক আছে। আর যখন ইন্টারসেপ্ট 1-2 ঘন্টা ক্লাস দিয়ে দিল, ওইটার রেসপন্সে চেঞ্জ করা নেই।
This is better syntax. Hope it's clear, right? Huh? Making multiple requests with Axios.
Hello, sir.
Yes.
You showed us dot then syntax before you are deleting here, right? If both URLs having some problem and they are getting error, we need to write a catch of error, na sir. Here there are two URLs. For two URLs, we need to write two catch blocks, or one
No.
catch block is enough.
One catch block is enough. Let me show you.
Okay, sir.
ভালো বলছে।
Suppose there is something wrong. There is something wrong in the URL. See, this will
Yes, sir.
fail, right? This will fail.
Yes,
When
sir,
it
this
will
will
fail, this will fail.
বুঝতে পারলি তো?
So it fails, right?
Yes, sir.
Yeah, what we can do here, we can write a try catch block. We can write try catch block.
Okay.
This is the best way to handle.
Okay.
Now, when something goes wrong, the cage block will be executed. You see,
Okay, sir. Okay, sir.
if both of them are fine, if there is no error,
Ah,
if there is no error, then try will be executed, right?
okay, sir. Sir, if both URLs are facing the problem also, it will work, sir.
Same cage will be executed.
Oh, okay, sir. Okay, sir.
Yeah. Any other question?
Wait, I'm try catch level.
Okay. The next thing is Axios interceptors, or we can say HTTP interceptors. Let's understand what is interceptor and what is the use of it. What is interceptor and what is the use of it? HTTP interceptors. First of all, I'll show you one image. HTTP interceptors. What is this? Now what is happening from our React application, directly the call is going to API. Now what happens from client or from React, directly the request is going to server. Okay. But if we want, before the call is transferred to server, if we want, before the call is transferred to server, if we want some logic to be executed, then we can create one interceptor. Please understand. Now from React component, directly we are calling the server. But before React calls the server, in between, if we want to write some logic, then we will use interceptor. So client will send a request. The request will directly not go to server. The request will go to interceptor. In interceptor, what interceptor will do? Interceptor will modify the request object. In the request object, it will add something extra. Then that modified request will be sent to server. Suppose server responds some data. When server responds some data, again the response will go to interceptor. In interceptor, we will manipulate something. We will manipulate the things and we will return the manipulated data to React. So interceptor works as a mediator between React component and server. Whenever React component sends a request to server, if you want some logic to be executed for every API call, we can create one interceptor for that. Do you understand this concept at a high level?
So you can, but
Like whenever we make an API call, we want to add something to the requested API, or we would want to make some modifications on top of it. That's when we use the interceptors
Correct.
before sending it to server.
Yeah, let's say we have one requirement. To hit one URL, I need to add some request header authorization. Authorization is one request header that I have to add in every API call. If I have to add that in the request object, then instead of writing that logic in every component, we can create one interceptor. Make sense?
we and I think what
Okay. What are the common use case of interceptor? Add an authorization token, catch HTTP response to do some formatting, print the HTTP request in the console. If we have such requirements, we can create one interceptor for that. Is it clear?
Can you go on some other? Yeah. Done. Thanks, Andy.
Yeah. So
So HTTP response. Right? Suppose say we are in every URL, we are passing some session ID. So that session ID can be passed through this interceptor, means we should do this.
correct.
Okay.
Yes. So let's understand what is interceptor. Interceptor is a feature that allows an application to intercept. Intercept means modify the request or response before they are handled by then method or catch method. So HTTP request, from component we make HTTP request. That request will go to interceptor. Interceptor will modify the request, will add one extra field or will delete something. Then that modified request will be sent to server. Server responds with some response. That response will be given to interceptor. Interceptor will write some logic to modify the response and will return modified response to component. Is it clear?
Yes.
Yes. So this is how interceptor looks like, but we will understand examples. If you are okay with the theory part, I will create one interceptor and I'll show you with one example. Are we clear with theory?
Yes, sir.
Even while sending the response back from server also, we can modify using this.
We can do that. Okay. Now looks like
अनम्यूट करो संजय के बोलते तो तू भी
okay.
क्लास में बातें ऐसा कर
Okay. Looks like I don't have interceptor code, but I'll write it now itself. Fine. Request interceptor and response interceptor. There are two type of interceptors. One is request interceptor, another one is response interceptor. Let's create one request interceptor. If we create a request interceptor, how can we do it? First of all, let me show you without interceptor how it looks like, with interceptor how it will look like. Now, whenever I'm hitting this button, there will be two calls triggered. One is users, one is comments. If you open one of them in request header, how many request headers are there? There are 9 request headers. Nine request headers. And what all things we have? We have accept encoding, accept language, all these things we have. Right? We have these accept headers, request headers. Now I'll write one interceptor. I'll create one interceptor. Let me create one interceptor. So I'll go to my project. In project, will source. Inside source, I will not call it as components. I'll create another folder. Interceptors. Interceptors. Inside interceptors, I'll create one file, my interceptor one, my interceptor one.js. This is one interceptor. In this interceptor, what we will do, we will write some logic. What is the logic that we are writing? What is the logic that we are writing? Please understand. Export function my interceptor. We can say my interceptor one also. Export function my interceptor one. My interceptor one is a function, simple function. Then what are we doing here? Axios dot interceptors dot request dot use. We will get the request object, which is the original request object. In this original request object, this is original request object. If you do console.log original, or let me, anyway, I'll get to know from the line number. This is request. In this request, in this request, I want to add something. Request dot headers dot, or headers is one object. I'll add authorization is equal to some token. ABCD, some token we will pass here. Then return request. Now what will happen? Every API call you make from this project will go via this function, and every request object will have this authorization field. Only this is not enough. Once we created interceptor, that is not enough. We have to call the above function, in app.js. In app.js, we have to call it. In app.js, we have to call my interceptor one. We have to call it. Now what will happen? Every API call that we make, see, every API call that we make will go through that interceptor now. So when I click this button, there will be two API calls, and there will be two API calls. For both of them, give me a second. My interceptor one in app.js, my interceptor one I'm calling.
Really, it will work? My interceptor one? No, I don't think so.
Okay. Now let me see if the request is going to interceptor or not. Interceptor. My interceptor. Yeah, it's going. My interceptor one. Okay. Request dot headers. Okay. Fine. So it is being triggered. Then when we click on fetch data, if you check here, In the request header, authorization should be added. Do we see that? No. There are 9 request headers only. No, something is missing. Give me a second.
We are calling the components in the center component.
Yeah, but app is the parent most component, so it should be
Yeah.
fine.
Okay.
Yeah, I understand what is the problem. I'll 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 explain what is the problem. Give me a second. Let me disable this HTTP demo 4. Let me enable HTTP demo 2 where we are using Axios, not Axios client. Hope in HTTP demo 2 we are using Axios. So when we are using Axios, it will work fine. For Axios client, it is little different. Now users in request header.
Authorization, some
You see this?
ওটা গেল কেমন দেখলি?
Rule
প্রত্যেকটা
self
পেয়ে খালি করবে না কিন্তু ওটাও।
Is it clear?
setting that pinch
So Axios.all is not working, no? Means
No,
like that.
no, it's not like that. Not because of Axios.all. It is
guides the
because
case
we have used Axios client. For Axios client, there is another configuration. I'll show you that. So here in
Client use করলো না একটা?
HTTP client 2, sorry, HTTP demo 2, we have directly used Axios. If we have directly used Axios, it will work. Now, if we are using Axios client, please understand, this is how interceptor looks like. You have to create one interceptor like this, and you have to enable this interceptor in app.js. If you are using Axios client, then this way of adding interceptor is not correct. Is it clear? First of all,
Yeah, sir, Alonso will call interceptor app.js, right?
yes.
Yes, sir, how it is getting binded with the request object? Meaning it's a different component and
Because of that only its name is interceptor. We have to do nothing on
framework will
app
take care.
component. Yeah, framework will take care. When we load app component, just call this function. In this function, we write interceptor. So when we write interceptor, for every API call, not only this, if you have 100 API calls in 100 components, for all the API calls, this header will be added. Extra header will be added.
So is there any modification we can do for the request payload?
We can do that. So if you see here, this request is having many things. This is the request object. A request has headers. A request has env headers. Then request
Our actual
method.
data request object is nothing. Oh, sorry. There is no post. Yeah, request body.
Is it clear how to create one interceptor and enable that interceptor? This is how we will create the interceptor, and this is how that interceptor should be called in app file. Then a response interceptor. We will hit one URL. That URL will respond with some data. That will go to interceptor. we will modify the response. We will return that modified response to component. If we are doing that, that is called a response interceptor. Okay. Okay. What is a response interceptor and what is the use of it? Suppose uh, we are trying to hit one URL and that URL fails. When that URL fails, I want to have a global error cache. Global error cache means I'll show you Alt F my interceptor 2. In my interceptor 2, in my interceptor 2, what I'm doing, what I'm doing, yeah, Axios dot interceptors dot response. During response time, this interceptor will be called Axios dot interceptors dot response. This was Axios dot interceptors dot request. This is response. During the response time, this interceptor will be called. Okay. If it is response, return the response. Don't do anything. If it is error, then if error dot response dot status is 404, then throw this error. If it is something else, throw that error. Now what will happen? This API is getting succeeded. So there will be no problem. And that interceptor is not getting called also. We can say alert error interceptor called. It will never be called because this API is success. If intentionally I'll make it fail in HTTP demo 2, intentionally I'll make it fail. So when it fails, it will go to response interceptor. It should go to response interceptor. Give me a second. Okay, we didn't invoke this. Let's invoke this in app component. Let's invoke it in app component. In app component, let's call my interceptor 2. I'll invoke it. Now, when users, when the API is correct, the interceptor will not be called. If the API is wrong, the interceptor will be called. Error interceptor is called. And that error interceptor is printing the details. What happened, why it failed. Error interceptor called. And how this error interceptor is looking like. This is how the error interceptor looks like. Axios dot interceptors dot response dot use. If it returns response, return the response. If it returns error, then if it returns error, then do this. Is it clear?
Yes, sir. So, sir, these two interceptors will work for all the classes wherever we have used Axios, right?
Yes, yes.
Okay. And suppose for different class, I would like to, throw another error. So, can I create another interceptor for that?
No, we can write if else condition here only.
Okay.
So when we write interceptor, it will be for the whole project.
So it can be created only once.
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Then
So
suppose
Yeah, just a small doubt. Like for getting the error only, we can use these response interceptors.
No, not only error, for success also we can do it.
Like, do we need to modify the data anytime? Like any scenario will occur. Like response, we need to modify. Usually, we no need to, right?
Sometimes we have to. Let's say, suppose in HTTP demo 2, what is happening? When I hit this URL, it returns me some data. Using that data, I'm again writing response.data, right?
Yes.
If I don't want to do that, I will directly assign response here. That is my requirement. Then I'll create another interceptor. The interceptor name is my interceptor 3. In app.js, we'll call my interceptor 3. So here in my interceptor 3, what I'll do, use Axios dot interceptors dot response dot use if it is a response, if a response dot data, if response is containing data, return response dot data. Else, if response is not containing data, return the whole response. Do you understand?
Yes. Got it.
Now, because of this, this component doesn't have to write response.data. That is being done in the interceptor level only. So the component imported is my interceptor 3. Okay. In app.js, my interceptor 3. So in component level only, that interceptor is getting called. So if you go to my interceptor 3, when we call, yeah, it gets the response. In the response, do we have data? Yeah. If data is there, then return response data. If there is no data, return the response object. So it will return response.data. It will go inside this if block and will return only response.data. It will ignore other information, right? Is
Yes.
it clear?
Yeah.
So, sir, here we are having two interceptors for response. Is it fine, right? We can have
Yes, it
number
is
of.
fine. We can have multiple interceptor for a request, multiple interceptor for response.
Okay.
So this interceptor is doing something else. The other interceptor is doing something else. So for every API call, all three interceptors will be called. This will be called during the request. The last two will be called during the response.
Yes, sir.
And for complete application, these interceptors will be called, not only for one API call. Is it clear?
Yes, sir.
So when making a request, I just wanted to add some specific code to it. Otherwise, I mean, you showed some list of requests that is there already, right? I mean, to use like authorization and some other headers that are there. Apart from that, we cannot create a new one and give, or we have to use the ones which are there.
Can you repeat your question?
When you did console log of request, there are a lot of things that are already there displayed over there. So we have to use
Correct.
only those ones to add something, or
No, we can add our extra thing also.
okay.
So this is how original request object. This is
Mhm.
the original request object. In this original request object, we can add. See, this was not there even. We added.
Yeah, but headers was there inside that you added
Headers was there.
authorization.
Correct, correct. Headers was there. In this headers, we can add couple of more header. I will
Okay.
add another header. Let's say the header key is ABC. The value is XYZ. So this I can do. In this header, you will see now ABC call ABC key and XYZ value, right?
Mhm.
And it will work for all the APIs, not only for this component. You open any component, this interceptor will be running. But the interceptor concept will not work for a fetch method. So don't use fetch method. That is the limitation. Yeah. Next. Suppose in my project I have 100 API calls. I don't want to trigger my interceptor for
Okay,
all
okay.
100 APIs.
Multiple
I want to
acquisitions.
trigger my interceptor for 90 APIs. For 10 APIs, I don't want to call the interceptor. That could be a use case, right?
Oh,
In that case, we can remove an interceptor also. To remove interceptor,
Who knows?
this is how we create the interceptor. This is how we can eject the interceptor. Axios.interceptors.request.eject like this. So this is how we can remove the interceptor. Let's say after a point of time, you don't want to, let's say first user will log in. When user logs in, that time you want to run the interceptor. Once the user logged in, user landed on the dashboard page. After that, whatever API calls will be made, you don't need that interceptor to run. Then after login success, we can remove that interceptor so that for subsequent calls, the interceptor will not be triggered. It is disabled. Do you understand?
No.
Any question?
But where do we have to specify it has to stop using the interceptor there?
See, this is our interceptor, right? This is where we are creating the interceptor, right?
Yes.
And in app.js, we are calling, right? Whenever we are calling,
An API call,
whenever
it gets that into that interceptor.
here it starts the interceptor. And we need a point. That point can be after login success or after a button click. Whenever you want to disable the interceptors, you just write this line. Okay.
Yeah, and this should be written in app.js.
And no,
In the
this should not be.
component.
This line should not be written in app.js. This line can be written anywhere when you want to stop. Suppose somebody hits localhost 3000. When somebody hits localhost 3000, the login page loads. When the login page loads, you want to enable the interceptor. User clicked on login, user landed on a page. After user landed on the dashboard page, you want to disable the interceptors. You want interceptors should not be running anymore. Then when user landed the dashboard component, there we can write this line of code.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yes, guys, that is all about HTTP We saw how to fetch data from API using Axios, using fetch method, using Axios client. Lot of things we discussed.
Using Axios client, how can we call the router? Means that time it was not working.
For that also there should be something we can explore that. Interceptor for Axios client. So this is using Axios interceptors to no request direction. Okay, fine. Where is that number? Huh. Axios.create. Okay. So we have client, right? When we have client, on the client we can add. When we you see this, you can add interceptors to a custom instance of Axios. So if you want to add to the instance of Axios, add interceptor to a custom instance of Axios. If we want to add, then wherever we are creating Axios.create,
There only
whenever we are
import.
creating Axios.create, in that Axios.create only, in that Axios.create, we have to add. So let's say we have HTTP insert demo.
API.js.
Yeah, HTTP demo 4 is using client, right? I hope HTTP demo 4 is using client. Now there is API.js. In this API.js, we have client. Now, if I create one interceptor, let me go to my interceptor. Here I'll create another interceptor. The interceptor name is my interceptor 4. And this interceptor, where it should be added, we can do like this. We can do like this. Instance dot interceptors dot request. So instead of Axios, we have to say
Client.
client.
And we need to import the client.
Yeah. Got it?
Yeah. So the same file we cannot do, na? Axios that client.
We can do it.
But
We
this
can
will
do
be
it.
better practice, right?
This is better practice. So client dot interceptors dot request dot use now. Is it clear? Then this will be request. This will be request object. Then console.log request and return request. Return request. So after this, let me print Axios client. Yeah. Whenever we click on this button, this will not be a direct call. This call will go via the interceptor. What happened? Client dot interceptors. Okay. We didn't
I
call
think
this,
we
na?
did not call my interceptor.
Yeah. We don't have to write like this. We can directly write like this. No need to call also. Okay, let me call this in app.js. In app.js, what if I call my interceptor 4? My interceptor 4. You see?
Yeah,
Yeah.
got it.
Access client.
যদি গ্লাস ডোর থেকে আবার বেস্ট ওয়ার্ক পেজ টু ওয়ার্ক
Can you push all this?
Yes.
Closer.
Yes.
When we requesting interceptor, we are creating our own other side.
Yeah.
What if we want to get some response?
No, sir.
Actually, when we log in, we will get that header from the API. We will keep it in local storage. While sending, we will send it from the local storage. That is how it should be.
How can I get from response header?
From response header, what is the need to get from response header? So here, when you see response, when you print console.log response, you will see all the headers.
তাহলে তোমার
do
সেই
here
প্রবলেম ছিল না সেই হেডারে
console.log
ক্রস ডিপেন্ডেন্সি বলে
response,
তুমি যে ইন্টারসেপ্টরে
you will get the headers.
সেই আগের প্রজেক্টে
ওটা ইন্টারসেপ্টর দিয়ে যায় ওগুলো, বাট ওটা এনসিএন বলা হয়েছিল, রেজ করেছিল ওটা অন্য একটা ভাবে মেয়েটা সলভ করার চেষ্টা করছে, বকুল বললো গতকাল, যেটা সলভ হয়নি তো ব্যাকএন্ড থেকে ফ্রন্ট এন্ড থেকে। ওটা হচ্ছে
Okay, this is
ও চেক করতে
Axios.
যদি এটা ইউআরএলটাকে আইফোনের মধ্যে ওপেন করে
Let
তাহলে
me
লগইন
use
থেকে পাঠিয়ে
http demo 2.
অন্য কিছু করেনি, জাস্ট একটা প্যারামিটার চেক করছে যে আইফোনে আসছে কি আইফোনে আসছে না।
Yeah, this is a response header.
এটাকে বন্ধ করে ইন্টারসেপ্টর
My interceptor 3 line number 5. My interceptor 3 line number 5. In this response object, you will see the headers. You see?
দু চারটে কথা এখন যেগুলো শুনলে টুকটা লিখে দেবে একটু।
Okay.
ইন্টারসেপ্টর কল অ্যাক্সিওস দিয়ে জাস্ট ক্লোজ করে আর রেকর্ডিং করতে হবে না।
That is all about interceptors. Tomorrow we are going to discuss one more important topic called routing. This is again important. Please don't miss tomorrow's session at any cost. This is very important. See you tomorrow.